Well, welcome back, everybody, to the show. We took sort of a couple days off because we are moving. We're now moved, and then we're working on new studios, temporary, very exciting stuff. We're back in Austin, and any period of time passes, I don't do a bunch of segments. Too many things happen. So in this segment, let me go through a bunch of all the stuff that's actually happening in America. This is not a drill, and there are so many crises taking place because of the current presidential administration. Let's start with this clip, and it connects to a series of stories we'll go through where the Trump administration is just throwing out our laws in many ways and due process for immigration photo ops. They say it's to detain or deport dangerous criminals. But in so many cases, because of their lack of respect for our laws, they're actually punishing innocent people. The first clip is him being asked about the masked officers coming up and grabbing the Tufts University student who had a student visa and throwing her into a car.
And did you see the video of the Tufts University student who was taken off the street by ICE agents last week in hoodies and masks? There's been a lot of criticism of that. Are you comfortable with how that was handled?
Well, I haven't really looked at it in any detail, but I will. I mean, I have seen it quickly, but not, I wouldn't want.
Do you know what's going on in your own administration? That's the question that needs to be asked whenever he gives. That's the follow-up question, because we're going to get to later on the U.S. soldiers who died in Lithuania. His first answer after that had been reported on for hours was, I don't know about that. Here, a similar thing, a huge news story. And he's, it could be he does know and he's trying to get out of answering it. But in some of these cases, it seems very genuinely a situation where he doesn't know. And that's more concerning because he just doesn't seem to know much about his own administration in some cases. The next story is of a similar nature. Now the federal authorities are admitting we might have made a mistake.
Has admitted to mistakenly deporting a Maryland father to a Salvadoran super prison. Federal lawmakers confirmed that the man who was granted protected status in 2019 was deported due to, quote, an administrative error. Even some supporters of the president.
And he goes on to talk about something that we will in a different segment today, even though I'm going to try to go rapid fire through a bunch of stuff in this segment. There's so many more because there's so much crazy stuff. This is Representative Gonzalez, a Republican congressman who's concerned about this. Someone with legal, temporary protected status, and he was swept up in the deportations to El Salvador. Again, they're going to keep doing straw man, so let's always address it of, so you must not want violent criminals to be held accountable or taken off the street. That's just a lie. Obviously, we do want that. What we don't want is you punishing innocent people. In some of the stories that we talked about, like the makeup artist, there's compelling evidence that this is someone who entered the country legally, had legal status, no criminal record, is pursuing the American dream in every sense of it, believes in what we believe in, like all those little check boxes that they would create, checks them all, is gay, fear of retribution because he spoke out against the Maduro regime, and with all of that is now rotting away in an El Salvadoran prison and fears persecution because of his sexual orientation, I should note. And that's who they're punishing for the wrongs of others. That's not our system, and throwing out due process to create these photo ops is disgusting.
The Trump administration now admits, and this is in a court filing, that it mistakenly deported a Maryland father to his home country of El Salvador, which he fled due to gang violence. The administration says it can't bring him back now because he's already over there. Does that concern you?
It does, and this is where I think it's so important that we focus on convicted criminal illegal aliens. Last year, I wrote ICE, and
Yeah, and that's, though, the problem, sir. Getting to this next part, remember when Trump said this?
And we have Marco Rubio in charge. Good luck, Marco. Now, we know who to blame if anything goes wrong.
You remember that? Oh, no, it's funny. But then I showed you this clip where it seems like with some of these insane draconian immigration policy stories, Trump is trying to set up Marco Rubio to be the fall man, because in violation of court orders, in violation of our legal process, of the dedication we're supposed to have to due process, and of people's basic rights, they're proceeding with actions that then it seems Trump's preparing, if this becomes too much of a political headache, to blame on Marco Rubio.
Responsible. Now, in this case, Marco Rubio has a lot of big decisions to make, and he's a fantastic person, a great man. I think he'll be our best. I think he has a chance to be our best Secretary of State. He's been doing incredibly. He works so hard. He's gone to so many different countries already, and he's got the authority to get bad people out of our country. And you can't stop that with a judge sitting behind a bench that has no idea what goes on, who happens to be a radical left lunatic.
Do you think the judiciary...
And then in a different clip that I think is even more relevant, I don't have it for you, that we also talked about, where he says, oh, I don't know, ask Marco about invoking the Alien Enemies Act. That wasn't me, even though his signature's on it. So I think Rubio may end up being the fall man, again, if this does become, as it should be, given the constitutional crisis that it is, because it's all happening in violation of court orders, the political nightmare, then he's going to end up making Rubio his fall guy. But there you hear him continuing to attack the judges, because they're the ones saying, hey, you can't just throw out our system of laws because you want something to happen quickly, and you can't violate people's rights to do so. And so now there's this big effort in MAGA to say that the real problem with our system, the real issue here, is that judges have the power when a case is brought to hinder the president's authority. But that is the basic structure of our system of government. So another really dangerous phenomenon that we continue to follow is their undermining of the judiciary. And Eric Swalwell here, one of the advocates of this message that these judges are rogue and the Trump administration shouldn't have to listen to them, and they need to be held accountable, impeached, removed. Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, was nicely sort of confronted by Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell.
Resolution. Now, Speaker, you said some of these judges are pretend presidents,
how much would the gentleman give to his campaign?
700 district judges that are pretending that they're president. There's a single judge in a federal courthouse in Amarillo, Texas, where conservatives are forum shopping and having cases sent to him, Judge Kaczmarek. In 2023, he suspended mifepristone approval. That's a medical abortion pill. Can you direct me, Speaker, to the statement you gave objecting to him doing that? I couldn't find it.
No, I haven't spoken out on this issue until I was invited to come here.
Okay.
I wrote about it in 2011, and I submitted that for the record.
How about when Judge Kaczmarek ruled against ACA protections for LGBTQ individuals in November 2022?
Well,
did you speak out against that rogue judge?
I think the term "I have not spoken on this issue until I was invited here" was generic and included every single one of the cases you want to ask about. So I will stipulate in advance. I did not comment because I did not comment.
I did not comment because it was Biden, and I liked that was shot down, or I liked that it was Obama. Is that really so hard to understand, Eric? That's the response from all of MAGA, by the way, because you can do this to the cows come home, which is, hey, this judge shot down a Biden thing, that judge shot down an Obama thing, and you didn't seem to have a problem with it. The overarching true argument is, we don't really care because now this is happening to the guy that we like. And when we like him, then he should be able to do whatever he wants. But our system of government necessitates something different. And you could have a problem with that, and your process of fighting it is through the courts. You appeal that decision. And that's what they're trying to undermine. And it's leading to these judges who are upholding the law having their lives threatened and being harassed.
I call on my colleagues to take down the wanted posters with judges' faces on them outside of offices and House office buildings, temper their discourse when it comes to judges who are just doing their job, stop the calls for impeachment, and oppose this very unfit bill. Thank you, and I yield back.
And we keep hearing that, no, it's different because there have been so many injunctions against the Trump administration already. There's been this unprecedented rate of judge interventions. But that's because Trump keeps trying to act outside of the law. And then they come back to this, well, Trump has a mandate thing. And again, you can kind of just quickly test if that's an honest principle they have by saying, okay, so all the things you said that Biden was doing that you didn't like, that you didn't think he should do or didn't have the power to do, or whenever the Supreme Court shot down his student loan forgiveness plan and you celebrated that, was your argument, well, he does have a mandate, so he should be able to do whatever he wants? No. That's the guardrails we put institutionally. Those are the checks and balances. And sometimes they're going to act in a way that you're going to be upset with, but it doesn't mean that you just get rid of it. And you have to, if you're consistent, apply that to an individual that you wouldn't want to have all of the power in the world, even if right now you want Trump to. This next story, where Trump again just did not know what was going on, is a tragic one. New York Times reports fourth U.S. soldier is found dead in Lithuania. The soldier and 3 others had gone on a training mission in a 70-ton vehicle that sank in a bog near the border with Belarus. And this is really sad. The first time Trump got asked about it, he said this.
Mr. President, have you had any updates on the U.S. soldiers missing in Lithuania?
I have.
Can you give us an update?
So 3 are no longer with us, and 1 is unfortunately probably in the same category, but they haven't declared that yet. It was a very...
And I apologize, that's the second clip. So we'll watch. This is the most recent one, then we'll go back and flash back to the first time he was asked about it.
heavy truck, like a toy, but I mean really heavy, that lifted the heaviest equipment. And it would seem that the bank of the lake collapsed. The weight is so big. And it was at night, and it was very cold weather, ice, a lot of ice. And it's possibly slipped, and the weight is so enormous of this thing. It's a massively heavy vehicle. And if they slipped a little bit, that's probably what happened, and it flipped. And 3 are gone, and 1 is missing.
On a separate topic.
So that was most recently what he said, but the first time he got asked, he said this, which was pretty troubling.
About the soldiers in Lithuania. Have you been briefed about the soldiers in Lithuania who are missing?
No, I haven't.
Mr. President, have you spoken, sir, with the...
And again, if it's disrespectful with the tragedy that this is, but then we go back as if this does much in our discourse, but I still think it's important, to the hypocrisy, the lack of consistency with the principles, because every time anything happened under Biden's watch, they would blame it on him, number one, obviously. But the number two, if he had said, after a story had been reported on, well, the press had got their hands on it, not to mention when the U.S. government knew about this. At that point, it was just missing soldiers. But if Biden had been asked such a question during a press conference and then went, I don't really know about that, but I'll see. After clearly enough time had elapsed where he should know about it as the commander in chief, it would have been a huge story on Fox News, and it's not. And they would have made it about how he's completely mentally incapacitated, and he also doesn't care about them, and he's a terrible human being, right? And calling that out's not going to change the way they cover it, but I still, like I said, think it's important. Then you have, as the next topic, to get at least myself caught up on all of this after our couple days of moving. Trump says he thinks he can run for a 3rd term and doesn't rule out doing so. There are methods which you could do it, he says. Yes, a constitutional amendment, which is impossible in our current political environment to see ratified. Quote, a lot of people would like me to do that, Trump told Welker. But I basically tell them, we have a long way to go. It's very early in the administration. Have you been presented with any potential plans, Welker says, that would allow you to serve a 3rd term? And I honestly hate that. There's not like a bunch of mysterious plans that could make this possible. It's essentially impossible because before the 2028 election, you would have to have it proposed in Congress, then 2/3 of the House, which is essentially evenly split right now, Democratic and Republican. So you would never have that. And 2/3 of the Senate, both passing this proposed amendment. And then 3/4 of the state legislatures ratifying it, which would not happen. Or the states, 2/3 of the states could come together and call a constitutional convention. And if 3/4 of those If 3/4 of the states then at the convention ratified a proposed amendment, it would happen. So it's not going to, which is why people see something authoritarian here. Not that through constitutional means they're going to get an amendment and then Trump's going to run again, but that they may declare that for whatever bogus legal reason, he could run and then ignore the courts when they say that's not allowed, like they're doing now with his things we referenced earlier. So I don't even like the Welker's going, have you been presented with any plan? The way is politically impossible. So why are you even talking about this? Trump replied, there are plans, there are not plans, there are methods which you could do it, as you know. There are plans, there are not plans. Nice. Well, that's one scenario, Trump replied in response to what Welker threw out here, which is that Vice President J.D. Vance would run for president in 2028. And if he were victorious, Vance would then pass the baton to Trump. You know what's so funny? They accuse Obama of that. Obama's running the Biden administration from his basement and didn't present evidence. But is that what they're talking about? Like Vance is technically the president, but Trump calls all the shots? Then Trump was asked about the same thing here.
You said you were not joking about a third term, about possibly wanting a third term. Does that mean you're not planning to leave office on January 20th?
I'm not looking at that, but I'll tell you, I have had more people ask me to have a third term, which is in a way a fourth term because the other election, the 2020.
Look at Howard Lutnick back in the dark, just grinning away. What's so funny about this? Because again, I'm sure Trump doesn't even know how a constitutional amendment becomes an amendment. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. But if they would take the time, the Bannons of the world also went, no, we're thinking of ways. The ways they're thinking of is declaring something bogusly, which is the big fear here.
2020 election was totally rigged. So it's actually sort of a fourth term in a certain way. I just don't want the credit for the second because Biden was so bad. He did such a bad job.
Look at Howard behind him. He's so funny. Ugh.
And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm popular, if you want to know the truth. I think I'm popular because we've done a great job. I think we've had the best almost 100 days of any president.
They keep saying that. We've turned everything around. We've had the best 100 days. Oh, okay. So do these economic indicators concern you? It's all Biden's fault. It's all Biden. This is all Biden's everything. Technically we're still in Biden's administration. So then he turned everything around. No. We turned everything around. Everything's great now because of us. I thought Chris Murphy had a good response to this whole third term thing.
They're asking me to run, and there's a whole story about running for a third term. I don't know. I never looked into it. They do say there's a way you can do it, but I don't know about that. But I have not looked into it. I want to do a fantastic job. We have 4 years just about.
Sorry, again, before showing you Chris Murphy's response, who's saying there's a way? There's one way, a constitutional amendment. The numbers of who's in Congress and the states means that's not going to happen. So what is this majestic way that people are presenting to you? It's saying like he did, well, previous elections were rigged, so I'm owed an extra term because that's definitely something that the U.S. Constitution talks about. And so now I'm just declaring that I'm not leaving.
Almost close to 4 years.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune has basically said Trump is just messing with the media. Do you think that your Republican colleagues and the Democrats should take him at his word, take him seriously, that this is a possibility, that somebody is looking into it?
As Senator Booker is doing right now, Democrats should stay focused on the central storyline. This week, Republicans are going to be voting on a procedural step to try to cut Medicaid by $880 billion. That's going to throw millions of people off their health care in order to enrich their very wealthy friends. It is not a coincidence that Donald Trump is floating this idea of running for a third term during the week in which an outright theft is happening, maybe the biggest transfer of money from the poor and the middle class to the wealthy in the history of the country. So there's a lot of things Donald Trump.
I think that's a brilliant response. It's not that we should take lightly throwing out these unconstitutional statements, by MAGA, but we also shouldn't allow Trump, again, as he does so often, to just control the narrative. And now we're all talking about, oh, does he have a secret way to become president? And that maybe he sees as less damaging than focusing on what the House, what Republicans are doing in seeking to gut Medicaid. And then what Trump's broader economic proposal and agenda does in the lives of people. So I won't even play the other clip that I was going to play for you where he talks more about it, because let's not be distracted by it. But then here he says the word nice is an old-fashioned word.
Mr. President, you met with the chairman.
Somebody said that about me the other day. He said, who doesn't know me very well, they said, you're such a kind person. And I said, say that again. They said, you're a kind person. I said, I've never heard that before. It was a weird statement. I was kind.
Who said that?
I've heard of words that, I don't know, I better not tell you. You know, I've been called a lot of things, but it's sort of a different kind of a word. It's like an old-fashioned word, isn't it?
So from what we've heard from Trump, the word nice and the word groceries are really old-fashioned, weird, kind of unconventional words that people don't use very often. Two of the most frequently used words, probably, in the English language. Very bizarre stuff. If you appreciate the show, please do click the join button below.